All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Sean Heritage, U.S. Cybercom Portfolio Lead at Mantech. I'm here to kick off the session on evolving the data, analytics, and automation environment for defensive cyberspace operations. We have 5 exceptional subject matter experts participating on the panel this morning, and it's my distinct pleasure to introduce our moderator, Mr. David Richardson, the Deputy Division Chief, Perimeter Defense, DISA. A proud Navy veteran, Mr. Richardson served in uniform at the White House and has been instrumental in developing our nation's cyber workforce. In his current capacity, he is leading the charge in defending the NIPRNet and CIPRNet from the internet. He will introduce the esteemed panel members we have assembled here today. Please join me in warmly welcoming Mr. David Richardson.
Does the mic work? There we go. Good morning. So thank you all for coming. And yeah, slight change. They had gotten a hold of an old bio. So I'm the division chief for the data analytics portfolio within PEO Cyber. So we're responsible for essentially collecting all the, I'll get our photos up here to help you out. But we really collect all the cyber relevant data from all the various sensors and tools across the DoD in order to, provide analytics and get that data in the hands of our defensive cyber operations teams. And so what we brought together today is a panel of a bunch of SMEs related to this capability and this need that we have. And we've been working on kind of evolving this. If any of you attended the keynote yesterday where Mr. Barnhurst and General Blackwell were speaking, you might have heard the word data. I think I heard it about 150 times. And you might have heard the word analytics about 100 times. It's definitely an emphasis of our current director. That's a passion of his, is data and analytics and using the data with a purpose to actually get after defending the DoD itself. So with that, I'm going to introduce the panel, and then we'll go through a series of questions and kind of have some interactions up here, and then we'll open it up for questions for any that you may have out in the crowd. So to my left, starting right next to me here is Wayne Walsh from the Chief Data Office. He's the deputy at the Chief Data Office. And then right next to him is Mark Jones. He's one of my lead engineers on quite a number of the programs to include the SOAR and DTIP, and we'll get into some of these capabilities. Right next to him is Dr. Major Pavlik. What good computer scientist doesn't have a 2-liter bottle of Mountain Dew with them? Never leaves home without it. And then we have Chief Millsap from the J357, and who's going to provide some of that operational importance of our data. And so what our team, and there's a lot more to the team that's helping us evolve the data analytics than what you see right here. I just couldn't bring everybody up here on the stage. It would probably crash the stage, but a couple of them here in the audience, so I appreciate them attending as well. But and there's a whole lot more that are back at the office. But what we're doing is we are evolving this, and in some cases that involves migrating things into the cloud. It involves taking a look at some of our tools, doing an analysis of alternatives, and identifying are there better solutions, better ways of doing analytics, and really just kind of looking at all the different ways we can go at getting the right data in front of all the folks. And again, industry is a big part of this. I've spoken to many of you already about some of these capabilities. So there are contract teams here in the crowd that I can see that are helping us get this accomplished as well. So that's super important for us. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started and just kind of, we'll get into what is the importance of this data And so my first question is for Wayne, and just where does the Chief Data Office fit into, this effort?
I'm going to steal your microphone here.
Oh, yeah.
So the Chief Data Office obviously supports the readiness within the organization. We're obviously and very much looking to push that continuous modernization, support that continuous modernization. We're looking to align the policy requisites that go with that modernization and that readiness, and focus on those capabilities to deliver agency success. I know I talked
We got to
about
share
it.
mics. So you mentioned supporting readiness, and how does this solution meet that requisite?
So the solution meets the requisite because we're looking at the agency level, right? DISA, JFHQ, DODN together, as with our mission partners, to move toward a more and a very important common operating picture. We are ensuring interoperability through a common schema, very paramount. We're looking to, and I believe we're looking to create the very first DoD level cyber data fabric. This capability that's being created on through ID6 on the DISA side can support department-wide data analytic capabilities and visibility. And I believe it also breaks legacy and moves us towards moving those barriers that currently exist on our side. It moves them closer to those threats that are out there.
Thank you. So what do you see as the next steps, thinking about this environment modernization?
So the environment modernization, organizationally, again, I expect or believe that we can look toward enterprise-level integrations across the board, DoD-wide. Some people love the word enterprise, some people hate it. I'm just going to abuse it today. We also have, we can also look forward to greater data engineering opportunities. We have, every organization has different divisions, directorates, JADERs, and they all have different requisites for data engineering. Some of them are on the business level, some of them are on the cyber level. Getting after what those capabilities exist and how to bring them all the way down to the user level it's paramount. Let's see. I also see opportunities for platform and infrastructure updates. Again, continuous modernization, increase and improve decision-making ability for our leadership. Huge. And of course, analytics and visualizations, again, as the director has been pushing, right? We need greater analytics, greater visualization, so the leadership can make data-driven decisions. I also, at least on my side, for data governance, I'm looking toward assessments and studies so that we can be more successful in getting those analytics assessed, valued, and pushed down to those who need it.
All right, thank you, Wayne. So let's go over to Mark. And so what are the major components that are involved in bringing all of this together?
All right, so the first portion of this involves bringing the data in, getting the various types of data into the right locations, into making sure we're collecting the data that we want to collect, and making sure that it's being put in places that are usable. But obviously, once you have that data, you need something to do with it, or it just sits there doing nothing. So on top of that, we want to build the consolidated analytics workflow. So we get events, triggers, whatever, comes in, we have data to operate on, and then we need to put it through an analytics workflow. So the first step is triage through something like SIM. We want long-term threat capabilities, long-term analysis of those alerts that are coming in to give us better quality alerts, better quality information of what we're looking at, and we do that through a curated threat intelligence platform. And so we do that by reaching out to industry and collecting indicators of compromise, threat feeds. We do that by generating those threat feeds within our own platform. And then we need something to kind of tie it together and move us forward into the future through an automation, and that's where SOAR comes into place. And so the goal with this consolidated analytics workflow is that we have the data that's there ready to be operated on. We have analysts being able to log in and go, here I can do something really quickly through triage things, push things over to the better a more in-depth platform for more in-depth threat hunting, and make sure that each step of the way we're improving the process and making the process ready to work better in the future so that we continuously generate better quality intelligence. Additionally, on top of all of that, we connect that through AI and use AI to train on what our analysts are doing so that rather than a sort of very generic AI making very generic like suggestions for what we want to be doing, we have an AI that is trained specifically on the way that our data analysts handle resolving tickets that we see within our system. And then we train that AI to be able to perform activities as a level 1 SOC analyst, to identify risks and perform activities faster than an analyst would be able to, or at least pre-stage a thing in order for analysts to be able to sort of offload some of the very generic, repeatable workload into a very high confidence automated model. And then that gives them the ability to focus on the really long-term, high priority, high difficulty to resolve tickets and issues that come up.
Outstanding. Would a diagram be helpful?
Yes. Yes.
All right, so I got a diagram for you as well, if you need it. And you mentioned this threat intelligence platform, so can you share a little more about what this brings to the DoD?
Yes, so as you can see on the platform, again, we're talking about data coming in, being stored in the right places, and then that workflow of DTIP, which is the threat intelligence platform, the curated threat intelligence offering, SOAR, which is kind of the glue that holds everything together, and then the SIM, which is the triage, which is where it all starts. So the threat intelligence platform, DTIP, that is, the purpose of that is to be an aggregator of threat intelligence, whether that's coming from risk management, whether that's coming from AI scoring, or whether that's coming from the commercial threat feeds. It's really important that we get high quality commercial threat feeds to be able to feed into this platform, which we can then use to enrich other commercial threat feeds and threat feeds that are generated from within the government. By using this curated threat intelligence, it gives us a very high confidence ability to reach out and make automated blocking decisions, excellent whitelisting, red listing. It gives us the ability to do threat hunting and see where patterns of attack are coming from, where they're being replicated. It lets us see, it lets us do detailed threat hunting, and it allows us to publish to a variety of other systems that want to ingest and use that data without necessarily being involved in the curation of that data. So if someone wants to ingest data from the platform and use it to make a blocking decision or an enrichment, they're able to do so through a very through low regret methodology, where we can have a really, really high confidence in the decisions that we're making, and know that there's not going to be human error introduced as much as possible. And then we can take this and put this on the low side and the high side and replicate it up to the high side with a cross-domain solution, so that all of the data that's being enriched on the low side then can also be used to enrich the high side data to make high quality decisions in both areas.
Thank you, Mark. And in your first response, you had mentioned SOAR. What interesting ways are you using SOAR now, and what challenges have you faced connecting to the environment?
Yeah, so SOAR is still very much in its infancy as of right now within DISA. We're working on kind of maturing that offering within the platform. We had originally started targeting it as a collaboration capability to allow people to do some, quick automations and look for ways to do ticket management and investigations that couldn't be handled via the SIM. However, as we started working with it, we understood the sort of raw capability that a orchestration and automation platform can provide, and so we have been developing other use cases where automations can be kicked off and automate data analytics throughout the platform, whether that's from a very specific SOC analyst use case of improving the workflow from a very sort of basic ticket and automating a lot of those general steps, or whether that's things that don't necessarily have anything to do with SOC analysts, like leveraging the EICAM offering to automate and account provisioning and account deletion. So that kind of capability of something that can connect really well with other pieces of software has actually proven really vital for us. It allows for faster incident response, and it reduces alert fatigue from the analysts. The other thing that kind of leads into is the goal for us moving forward is really heavily modular design. We want to make sure that for each piece within the system, we are getting the best software that industry has to offer. And so by, for the threat intelligence platform, if we want to make sure that we're getting the best that industry has to offer. And what we have noticed throughout this process is that a lot of people, companies within industry, they want to offer you a solution that says, we do everything. Everything can be done in this one single pane of glass. But companies that kind of, specialize in something, like ticket management or knowledge management or something, tend to have an offering that aligns with our requirements that is more in line than a full, platform that does everything kind of solution. And so having the ability to kind of modularly pick the best offering that best meets the needs of the analysts and integrate those together with the other platforms and the other software offerings that meet our requirements and meet the use cases the best is really vital. So, from industry, having, extensible open API solutions that we can leverage the power of something like SOAR to kind of stitch together with other softwares that have open and extensible APIs is going to be really vital for us moving forward and will help us improve the efficiency, of the system and what it can provide.
Thank you, Mark. And so Major Pavlik came to our team and really started giving us some insight into the data and some of the efficiencies that we could take a look at. And in ways we can either reduce costs by the amount of storage and things along those lines. So with that, I just turned to you, Major Pavlik, and ask you, as you started to look at our data, what did you find?
So as I came onto the team, what I was hearing a lot of was we were just blowing out our budget every month, and we were trying to figure out why. We had planned for a certain amount of data, we had planned for a certain amount of money, and so I started digging into it. Where are we spending the money? What's happening? One is that we were storing a bunch of copies of data for different service. So we're running Elastic, we're running Splunk, we're running Databricks, and we have Azure Blob Storage, and this is just our Azure IL5 environment with 4 copies of the same data in different, each one with its own service, holding its own copy of the data. And then we were doing a lot of, our long-term storage wasn't great in that we were doing our long-term archival copy of the data that we just stored in Azure Blob Storage. We were storing that in an uncompressed Avro format. So we were just storing raw data, and it was blowing up to petabytes of data when it could have been tens or 20 or maybe 100 terabytes of data. And this went unnoticed for a while until the cost impact happened, because it was sort of an unintuitive interaction of the Azure Microsoft Event Hubs and the way we were sending the data across. We were sending compressed data, and it was the Microsoft service that was actually uncompressing it and storing it. And so until you went and manually looked at the data, you didn't realize it had been uncompressed kind of in the process without you knowing it. And then we had a lot of data replication happening within Azure itself. So we were doing, so a lot of non-critical data was being stored with full geo-replication for a whole year. So we were storing, so the full geo-replication meaning 6 copies of the data distributed across 2 different geographic regions and up to 6 data centers, with a lot of data that we absolutely did not need that kind of level of reliability or redundancy. If it went down for a couple hours and came back up, that was generally going to be okay if we were saving millions of dollars a year to do that. So we reduced that from 6 copies to 3 copies and moved it down to 1 geographic region. So now it's being stored in 3 data centers in 1 geographic region instead of 6 across 2. It was just cuts our data cost in half by just making some quick setting changes in Azure, which is really an interesting cloud thing that you can be very agile in terms of changing how you're doing things. But it can create some very unexpected costs, because you get billed for things that if you're not very careful, you will not expect to receive.
All right, thank you for that. And how do you plan to go about optimizing our data flow, helping our team in ensuring we can optimize that?
Yeah, so some of that was the sort of the quick wins I talked about, like that we already did. So we turned off our geographic replication for the non-critical data. We implemented more aggressive lifecycle policies. So a lot of our data was being stored and just warm for the whole year or similar. So now we're moving from warm to cold storage much more aggressively. So after 30 or 90 days, depending on the kind of the value of the data, we move it into cold storage. And we started deleting all of the uncompressed copies of the data and storing compressed instead. Similarly, because we were storing multiple copies of the data where each service is taking its own copy of the data, we started consolidating into that. So one example is we're running Databricks Delta tables to store data, and we had a long-term archival copy in Azure Blob Storage. Well, Databricks can just read Azure Blob Storage, so we just said, how about we just store 1 copy in Delta tables and make that the long-term archival copy that Databricks also has indexed and compressed and available for us to use. And then and we're not locked to Databricks by doing that. We're storing these in Parquet files so that any tool can still go in and read those files stored in the blob storage. And then one of the other things we've been doing is sort of standardizing our data flow so that all data flows through our Kafka data brokering cluster as the ingest point. So all the data feeds from all over the DISA that come to our data analytics platform, they come in through our Kafka data brokering cluster. We store a copy of the data in tiered storage for 14 days. So tiered storage meaning we store the Kafka itself is managing some Azure underlying storage in the Azure Blob Storage, where and we're kind of looking at, like, is 14 days the correct amount? We adjust that based on how much our metrics. So what that does is that any service that gets interrupted, as long as it's not down for more than 14 days, it can just pick back up right where it stopped and start pulling that data in again from the Kafka topics.
And just a quick question for either you or Mark. I've kind of heard a theme of like the importance of the interoperability of capabilities and then also kind of data standards. Did you guys want to touch on that or address that in any way of what we could ask industry to help us out with?
So the big thing for data standards is support open source data formats like Parquet files. We're like storing all of our data in Parquet, and then wherever possible, don't ask the data to be ingested into your system. Just scan the data where it is, and if you need an index, build an index or whatever that is, so that you can maintain a mapping back to the data. But you don't need to have your own copy of the data in your tool. Just be willing to point at an S3 bucket or an Azure Blob Storage or whatever.
And I would say from a functionality perspective, building your software in a way that I don't have to log into your platform and go through your dashboard in order to achieve the function that I want to accomplish, where I can just instead have it perform whatever function it's performing on the data via an API call and throw that into either a different dashboard or a different location. That becomes really helpful, because then we don't have to worry about either one, creating a single pane of glass if we don't think that that's the best way forward, or two, having to log into every individual system in order to accomplish the various tasks that, particularly for analysts, that they need to go on throughout the day. So having the ability to say, yeah, we have this product and it looks nice is great, but it's even better to be able to accomplish that functionality without even necessarily ever seeing the product.
Thank you for that. And another question, my boss would kill me if I didn't bring it up. So ICAM and integration with ICAM, where are we at with having our program, kind of onboard both ICAM from both aspects as far as the identity as well as the account provisioning, if you can address that as well.
You want to take that, or you want me to take that?
You start with it.
So EICAM is going to provide us a lot of ability for access controls and being really refined in who gets access to what and what level of access that they get with a really established pattern, and again, the ability for it to be automated rather than just being a very manual process. And we can actually leverage some of the automation tools as necessary to help make that more possible.
And so currently the ICAM does give us role-based access control in our system, so we can control who can see what data. Not every person who logs in the system can just see everything, because some data is sensitive. We have data from Inspector General or the certain DCO cyber data that not everyone should be able to see all the data all the time. So we do have that kind of role-based control, and we do that with ICAM. Also, automated account provisioning is something where we have, but it doesn't work great. We're building that out, making it better, so that people can request accounts, get the right permission set up without a lot of manual effort of creating accounts, setting that across all of our systems.
And then can you just touch on, there's a mandate for IPv6. Where are we at with that? And are our systems going to break when IPv6 comes?
I think in general, what I'm tracking is that the projects that we've been working for support IPv6.
So the big limitations we have are we have a lot of data feeds going through firewalls, that kind of stuff, where we have an IPv4 route established with the firewall. We switch over to IPv6. A firewall that was set up 2.5 years ago that no one remembers anymore suddenly starts blocking traffic, and so you have to fail over and go back and trace it down, fix that, get back to fix all the paths. But most of all the tools will support IPv6. It's generally all the integration of the system end to end building that platform out to support IPv6.
All right, thank you. So I'm not going to leave you out, Chief. Sorry, you're way down on the end. I almost forgot you.
Fine. No, we're good.
So Mark mentioned commercial intelligence feeds and such. So what benefits and challenges does commercial cyber intelligence bring to the cyber fight?
Okay. Yeah, so a couple of things as we lead into that question is, one, I'm different than the other three because we talk about use cases on my side, effects. General Stanton is really bent on establishing lethality. What we do is not about what we do. What these guys are doing are developmental to support the Department of Defense in executing fights and executing missions and things like that. And so it takes a different context than just building an IT system to protect my company assets. Not only do I have to protect those assets, but I have to protect a system of systems that allows a mission execution, whether it's AISR or whether it's some kind of logistics, whatever it might be, financial systems. That makes things more complicated for us because it's an external based capability. So commercial threat intelligence for us provides a baseline. Obviously in the DoD we have this really cool, exquisite intelligence that we get serialized reporting and all this cool stuff. And that's great stuff. What we get from commercial intelligence is availability to all. And as we move into the environment where we're dealing with conflict, right? And the unique things about what we do is that we do it and get shot at, and people want to break our stuff deliberately. They're not looking to use it for crypto mining or whatever they might want to, botnets and so forth. They want to break our stuff. And it's a very haphazard thing for us. Any kind of plan loses its efficacy on first contact, right? So, and we don't expect in conflict to have an organized network that's structured and behaves as we expect it to behave. If you look at examples in the past, the kamikazes in World War II, the Navy had great formations of ships. As soon as kamikazes came in, those formations went to pot, right? All the plans, just avoid those, defend yourself. We're going to face the same thing in the near future. It's not going to be, we're not going to see singular attacks or singular vulnerability exploitations. We're going to see something the director calls campaigning, and we have to be prepared to operate in an ad hoc environment. And I get verbose about that, but the benefit of commercial threat intelligence is I get to know globally what's going on without getting deep into read-ons and highly polished intelligence, and I can share that with mission partners. So we can create an effect, created information across our our multi-partner, multilingual environment that allows us to act in a comprehensive and cohesive manner against things that would threaten our ability to execute our mission. Obviously, the limitations for commercial intel, there's limitations when it comes to classified networks and getting in that environment and sharing real-time information so that we can act upon it. The other challenge is oftentimes our commercial intel. Every bit of our intel is very reactive. We have not trained ourselves to look forward and expect things and to plan and look at objectives effectively in the cyber realm. And so commercial intel can help us by helping us understand threats, understand this action leads to this action, leads to this action, and then helping us propose and define risk in the sense of future effects from an adversary.
All right, thank you, Chief. In a space where data is king, what can we do to integrate programmatic system and operational data?
That's a hard question. Who gave you that question? So let's talk about integration, right? When we talk about, I want to define some things first. Programmatic data, we're talking about the state and the function of a particular capability. We're talking about, do I have the money to operate it? Is it operating as expected? Do I have an SLA or a contract? Is it performing as expected? Just performing as expected doesn't mean it's doing what I need it to do, right? And so that's where you get into operational data, right? Is it meeting the mission? It may be meeting programmatic standards, but it's not meeting the mission. And then you have system data, which is just the records of how it's functioning, maybe syslog or some other things, right? That internal data. Merging all of those three are critical for us to understand how to move forward in supporting the DoD. And being able to throw intelligence against that and other capabilities, the SOAR capability, allows us to understand and develop things agilely, quickly. Agility is a buzzword, right? But the fact is, in conflict, I've got to move and I've got to shake and I've got to do things now. We're not prepared to do that without understanding all of those three subsets of data. My programmatic side can't move agilely if they don't understand that it's performing the function, but it's not meeting the mission. And I have to be able to describe that to them in a data context that allows us to move into a space where the mission's met. So that's a huge challenge. And oftentimes we segregate that by function, right? We're very sensitive about our data, whether it's financial, health, system data, even programmatic data versus operational data. My real-time analysts in ops look at this is a 1 and a 0 and it didn't do what it was supposed to do. But they don't look at this did what it was supposed to do. And oftentimes you'll get, you ask a user what's going on and they'll tell you the seam is down. And it's so much more complicated than that, right? So it's important for us to bring those things together so that we have quicker understanding. One of General Stanton's pet peeves is that it takes like 42 people to answer a question on an event or an incident because it's so complex. The SOAR concepts we're talking about, the DTIP concepts we're talking about, and merging all of that data allow us to make quicker decisions, pinpoint who the responsible party is, and deliver effect.
All right, thank you. So we've been talking for about 45 minutes now, and I think it's time for us to turn out to the audience and ask if you have any questions for the panel. And if you have anything, you can go.
So I just want to elaborate a little bit. You've heard everyone speak here. Absolutely phenomenal information, subject matter experts in their field. What needs to be contemplated here is when I talked earlier about breaking legacy, we've talked about EICAM. Where does that fit? When we talk about IPv6, when we talk about data analysis, where are we with open source? Where are we with this single pane of glass as it relates to that, right? How does it integrate with the Zero Trust framework versus defense in depth, right? These are some of the considerations that need to be looked at. Policy versus what is legacy versus what we're going to in the future. We need to stop looking down and start looking forward down the road so that we can get after the solutions holistically for the DoD, not just one customer or one single threat, if you will. Thank you.
There's a mic right here, I believe it should work.
Good morning. I'm curious, how are you accelerating data and cyber skill development to enable your workforce to keep pace with the evolving threat landscape?
And of course, they all look at the ops guy. So one of the challenges we have, right, is that, one, we have a contracted workforce. Two, a large contracted workforce, which makes it difficult to iterize training, move forward. The contracts we have we work with us very well on training and make sure that our people are prepared. This is not a dig on them. What we're doing, though, is to better define what we need as far as, we'll use the term readiness, a great DoD word, right? That to have our cyber analysts and our technicians prepared for conflict, because that's what we prepare for. It's nice that we can operate in peacetime, but when everything hits the fan, we've got to be able to still function. We're working with Cybercom to define what some of that readiness criteria is, looking at some of their platforms to develop ways to train, iterate, and assess. And presently, we're just in the exploratory stages of that. We have often, DISA for quite some time has not been considered part of the cyber mission force. Because of that, we haven't had access to a lot of the Cybercom tools that they're using to assess their cyber protection teams and other cyber mission forces. That's changing under new leadership, and we're starting to break ground on how we better do that and then have a standard across the force between DISA, JFHQ, DOD, and Cybercom.
And as budgets get cut, training gets cut first generally, but this is something we're trying to stay focused on. And so when we go out and select a new commercially available product or take the team in possibly a slightly different direction, we try to ensure that we are incorporating training not only for our engineering team that's putting this together, but also for the analysts that are actually going to have the hands-on keyboards. So that's kind of the goal as well.
Hey, thank you guys so much. Paul Godinez. I just wanted to ask a question. You led off, Mark, by talking about first you have to get the data to where it needs to be, and you guys have talked about kind of looking forward and modularity, data-centric versus network-centric, all of these kind of zero trust versus the defense in depth concepts. We focus primarily on cross-domain solutions and doing analysis of where we think the future is going there. I'm curious who in your guys' organization or in DISA at large is kind of looking at that, because that is the question, right, of how we get the data where we need it. So I would just kind of open that up, and I'm just curious kind of who's looking at the future of CDS to make sure that that keeps up with pace for the demand of data that we see coming. So.
I mean, I think there's going to be a heavy reliance on the cloud-hosted cross-domain solutions that are available. And so I know some of them have taken a little time to catch up with kind of getting their capabilities up and online. But again, that's not necessarily on the industry partners. I think that's some of the approvals and authorizations that it takes to get through that process. It's very complicated. But we're working through some of that. I mean, we only kind of kicked off that process of requesting it on our end, but there's a lot more that's going to end up going into that. I think initially one of our goals is to kind of, it's really to get the data up there, not necessarily to bring the data back, but things may change with time as our needs change. We'll kind of evaluate that and identify what's appropriate. I don't know if you have anything to add, but.
I'm trying to think, like, so the people so you asked about who's doing it. There's not a lot of people on our team, the data analytics team sitting up here, or J3, 57. But there are some people in the ID5, the PEO Cyber Perimeter Defense team. They have some CDS capability development, I believe. But primarily, we do rely on the sort of the industry partner, AWS or Azure or whoever has that kind of built into the platform. That is generally going to be sort of an already approved solution that we can get to approval in hopefully months instead of years, kind of to deploy that system out.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges I'm sure you're aware of is just the reliability of, as that data transitions through that CDS, ensuring that what you sent is what you get on the other end. But hopefully some of that improves with time. It's just the nature of that business. But the goal is to get to a single pane of glass as best we can, whether that is some sort of cross-cluster querying capability or, kind of sending it all up through a cross domain. We're looking through all those options to get the analysts the best data we can get them. Thank you.
I would also say putting the data into the right places for each data type doesn't prevent analysts from being able to look or query across all of the data that they need to at the same time. And that's where kind of orchestration tools, cross-cluster query type tools can become really, really impactful. So even if we have data that, okay, this is better stored in cold, this is better stored in warm, this is better stored on a different platform entirely, being able to orchestrate that query across all of those solutions is important, and that has everything to do with those cloud tools and the tools of the actual storage tools that are being used there, whether that's AWS or whatever.
In that vein, we're also looking at collaborating more tightly with the big data platforms. So Caspian Series, owned by Cybercom, Gabriel Nimbus, owned by Army, Elixir, owned by Air Force. So those are the kind of the cyber, like the broader cyber community in the DoD that we've been somewhat isolated from because we have our own systems that are not compatible with theirs. So we started to send some of our data feeds across to them so that more users can access that data who need to use it. And we're exploring some options for either implementing some B2B compatible infrastructure internally so that they can send queries, because the B2B platforms are distributed query capable. So I can be in Caspian and I can send a request to Gabriel Nimbus and get a response back without having to go log directly into Gabriel Nimbus. So we're looking at either having a DISA capability or we just we send all of our data to Caspian and use that as a long-term archival option. And so that we have a copy of the data over there that is maintained and that all the cyber community can use.
Good morning. Thank you for your time. Are you considering a low-band output for the ops cyber defender that's out in the middle of the field with a BGAN and can't see all of the glorious information that you're providing? If I wanted to do a comms check out in the field, I couldn't access what you're talking about.
Yeah.
We have a DDoS situation, but I still want to be able to see the surge. Are you considering a future output for the warfighter?
So not as much directly. So the B2B platforms do have the LTAC environment I'm aware of, which does allow them to take a laptops or kits to the field, and they can pull some local copies of cache data and do some of that kind of stuff. But that's the BDP platform, not the DISA platform, as it stands today.
I think what he's getting at is that our mission is to provide the cyber defenders that we support, provide them that data and the analytics capability, not necessarily the individuals you're discussing. So what we would do is provide it to some of these other platforms, and within the DoD, sharing of the data is a key importance. So we are definitely, as requested, ensuring that we get the data to the right location, depending on what it is.
Yeah, at this point, we're trying to leverage several different capabilities to see the realm of possible. It's a complex problem. So things like Joe and LTAC and things like that, to see what value they add in a DDoS environment and what data needs to be where and when, right? And what access.
Just to throw in a little bit more, I think you have an excellent question about DDoS environment, right? Our operators out in the field, front lines, who have intermittent comms, that solution is also available at DISA, right? That's Thunderdome. Thunderdome's doing that. This solution that these experts are creating is more, as they specified, right, back in the rear, where they're actually creating that end analysis environment so that when comms are achieved, right, they can get whatever that deprecation mitigated, right, for those for those operators out front.
Any other questions?
Got a few minutes left.
Yeah, we got a few minutes here. So, yes, go ahead.
Just for clarification, you mentioned having one, like the analyst can go into one tool or one SIM and get to each of these data lakes. Is that like a future thing? Because that's not currently what our team can do. We've got multiple SIMs and sometimes directly into the tools to do our threat hunting, and it's time consuming. So are we going to have one SIM or maybe something that allows us to jump into each of those?
Yeah, so that's very much where we're heading towards the future, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be one SIM, or it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be, one platform, one pane of glass.
Try and get to less than 10.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
But the goal would be through tools like SOAR. If you're in the SIM and you're trying to pull data from other SIMs, other sources, other whatever, you can click one button within that environment and it will handle all of the back-end stuff needed to either pull that data over or to transport you into the location that you should be at to look at all of that data together and then pull all of that data in there for you.
And that's a great question you had as well. So one of the things we're heavily doing right now is consolidating some of the data that's across DISA. And so we're bringing various different data, such as even, I could just give you one example. There's data that the ID5 team has that they're storing. They had it in a SIM. We're going to bring it over, and then they will no longer need to maintain that environment. It makes it a lot simpler for them and allows us to have a reduced operating cost, but also gets the data available to the analysts that maybe didn't have access to all of those attributes in the past. So it kind of gets more of that data available, but also puts it in one place rather than all over the place. So, but some of this takes a lot of coordination, and it unfortunately does take some time. But we're working through it. Major Pavlik mentioned 10. It may be more than 10, but we alone have, I believe, currently my count is 8 different platforms that we're putting data into, and that's ridiculous. So I'm working towards getting it to about 2 to 3 in the end. I'm hoping that's kind of how we can get it down to, but yeah, that's definitely one of the goals. And then we're definitely taking a look at which is the appropriate SIM to have, and that's a challenging one because analysts all have different preferences, and we get it and we recognize that. And it gets to the question of training. They have preferences and they've been trained, and they're very comfortable in a particular SIM. And if you put them in a room, I guess we could let them fight it out. But in the end, there may be like an agency level decision that the kind of SIM decides what is that way forward. But our ultimate goal is to get you a single pane, or as close to a single pane as we can, so you don't have to swivel chair as far.
Yeah, so Dave, just to emphasize your point, we have 8 at each security classification, right? It's NIPR and SIPR have their own individual environments. It's complicated. It's only going to get more complicated as we deal with mission partner environments in the Pacific. We don't have a NATO in the Pacific. We've got a bunch of small little treaty and small organizational country agreements and things like that we're going to have to work with. It's complicated, and we need help trying to figure out how you get that data in the right place, in the right way, at the right time for use of a multinational force to deliver effect.
And that is the ultimate goal of the consolidated analytics workflow, is to, triage first at whatever that happens to look like, and then anything that would require more than that is hopefully done in one location or with one or two button clicks that are informed of what's going to be needed moving forward. And then that can be done in a very collaborative space. If multiple people need to look at that one incident, that one ticket, multiple people need to, be able to pull data in, that can all be done from one central location, whatever that one central location looks like. And then that generates future intelligence for better and easier resolution in the future.
Any other questions? Because you triggered one. So you've brought up security orchestration and automated response SOAR multiple times. Do you see this as a capability that reduces the number of analysts, or is it just providing them with a more lethal capability of getting after the threat? And like, if you can expand on that a little bit as well.
I would say lethality is key here. I think right now, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think right now we are only able to look at and respond to somewhere between 25 and 30% of the incidents that are generated, because that's just...
And a lot of them are repeated
And a lot of them are repeated actions that either have very rapid resolutions or are false positives or things like that. And a primary use case of SOAR is to get rid of the false positives or to help identify and close those very quickly, and lead to quick resolutions of the really easy issues that maybe don't need to be looked at as much, so that people can focus on the more difficult one. And that's a big use case, is reducing alert fatigue and reducing sort of non-crucial work time, but there's more than enough work to go around.
Anything else from the... All right, I know it's an exciting topic to start off the morning. Hopefully you all had some coffee, keep you awake. But appreciate everyone for your time, for coming. Like I said, data is a key thing for this director, data and analytics. I mean, I couldn't have heard it mentioned enough throughout this conference. I always say there's like some buzzword or some theme, and oftentimes it's something that industry has latched onto, but it seems like this year data and analytics is a big one. And I think that's all driven from our director, who has a passion for it. So I appreciate your time and attention, and if any of you have any questions, feel free to hang back. We'll be here to address any individual questions you may have. So thank you.